Welcome to Leaping Larry's Revolutionary Reading Theatre.
Oh, yes, hello there, and welcome to Leaping Larry's Reading Theatre. Today we are going to be reading from the masterpiece work by Comrade Kim Jong-il called Socialism is a Science. I did not see you come in, so please get your crumpets and get comfortable, comrades, and let old Leaping Larry read ya a tale. Oh god, I'm almost turning into a sailor here. I thought the book readings would be in Discord from now on, yeah. We all thought that, didn't we? I don't know. I guess I'm still reading on stream for now. What can I tell ya? If you want a link to the read, of course, you can just type !reading in my chat. That will give you a link to it right there for your perusement. I decided I'm at least for now, we're just gonna read once a week on the stream. So for now, the readings continue. Alright, we got Socialism is a Science, Kim Jong-il. This is a treatise published in Rodong Sinbom, organ of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea, November 1st, 1994. Socialism is a science.
I've got some literature in my car that will change your whole way of thinking.
Thank you, Weedsickle. What's going on with my sound thing? That should have read your thing, but I don't know why it didn't. Oh wait, maybe I need to sign back into sound alerts. Hold on. There. That might be why. Well, hopefully it works with the next one. Thank you, comrade. Appreciate your support. Socialism is a science. Socialism has been frustrated in a number of countries, but scientific socialism is alive as ever in the minds of the people. Good morning, Jay. Welcome. Give a shout out to Jay, please, and comrades. Follow our comrade Jay from Barfcast TV. Fantastic communist leftist game streamer around these parts that you should be watching. Please. Thank you. The imperialists and reactionaries are fussing about the quote-unquote end of socialism with regard to the events in some countries which had been building socialism. The renegades of socialism try to justify their despicable betrayal, claiming that the ideal of socialism itself is invalid. However, the truth cannot be concealed or obliterated. The crumbling of socialism in various countries does not mean the failure of socialism as a science, but the bankruptcy of opportunism, which has corrupted socialism. Although socialism is temporarily experiencing a heart-rending setback because of opportunism, it will, without fail, be revived and win ultimate victory for its scientific accuracy and truth. Hey Christina, welcome in, comrade. Chapter 1. Socialism is the ideal and the revolutionary banner of the popular masses who are fighting for independence. The masses achieve their independence by means of socialism and communism. The people's independence was ruthlessly trampled upon in the hostile class society. Where there is oppression, there will be resistance. Where there is resistance, revolution will break out. The popular masses have vigorously struggled to win their independence for a long time. During this, class societies have changed and the struggle for the masses for independence has developed. However, the changes brought about when hostile class societies were replaced were in the forms of oppression of the popular masses' independence. The masses were not freed from social and political subordination. The failure to attain the masses' independence in hostile societies was because all these societies were based on individualism. Individualism is the product of private ownership. Society based on private ownership and its product, individualism, inevitably splits into hostile classes, produces class antagonism and social inequality, and is accompanied by the exploitation and oppression of the popular masses by a small ruling class. History shows that independence for the masses cannot be realized in a society based on individualism. A historical review of the development of human society proves that, in order to realize the masses' independence, a society based on individualism must be replaced by a society based on collectivism, by socialism, and communism. Capitalism has turned individualism into the unlimited greed of a handful of capitalists. It has precipitated antagonism in the society of individualism to the utmost. Meanwhile, the masses' struggle for independence has entered a new stage of development. Ours is an age of independence, when the popular masses have emerged as masters of their own destiny, as masters who dominate the world. This shows that the transition of a society based on individualism to a society based on collectivism is an inevitable demand of historical development. And I like this next part because I do think, and Michael Peretti talks about this as well, I do think that in some respects, with some Marxists, there's a tendency to say like there is no human nature, right? Which I do think is kind of a misnomer. It's like yeah, human nature is moldable, and human nature reacts to its material conditions. Absolutely, no one can deny this, right? Or no one can concretely deny this. But at the end of the day, there is certain like limitations to the idea that humanity has no nature. Because if humanity had no nature, then a society based on individualism would be something that we could eventually adapt to. But we can't. It causes these contradictions, and it causes this social instability, it causes oppression, and then therefore causes the resistance to that oppression, which, leads to revolt and revolution and so on and so forth. So, at the end of the day, we can understand that humanity does have some certain nature, right? Like, for example, it needs, since humanity is a social organism, and since our consciousness exists solely in the social realm, absolutely, we need collectivism in order to survive as a species. That is inherent to humanity. If there was no collectivism, then it would be impossible to think about humanity existing, let alone developing. Collectivism is humanity's intrinsic need. People can exist and develop only when they work as a social collective. Isolation is a recognized form of torture. Yep. And I mean, you can't even imagine a world where we would somehow grow up purely individualist, right? Like Exactly, Neuro Riot. People can exist and develop only when they work as a social collective. People can transform nature and society and meet their desire for independence not as individuals, but only through collective cooperation among members of society. If the people are to live in a social collective, they must meet both their collective and individual demands for independence. We are we are rejecting more than old philosophical ideals about humans when we reject collectivism. Yeah, exactly. The collective demand for independence is the common requirement of members of society for the existence and development of the social collective. The individual need for independence is the need as an equal member of the social collective. It is the need which should naturally be met through collective efforts in return for their contribution to society. The individual need for independence fundamentally differs from selfish greed, which ignores the collective and subordinates everything to the interests of the individual. Both the collective and the individual needs for independence can be satisfied to the fullest only through collectivism. Individual demand, divorced from collectivism, becomes selfish greed. Such greed encroaches upon the demands of other members of the collective for independence and hampers the unity and cooperation of the collective. I love that. And this is what I mean by like Juche is so like it's able to be put in such a simple, easy to understand way, but like this is saying a lot. And for a lot of people, like when you first start bringing these concepts to people in the West, you gotta have to spend like an hour on each of these sentences, on each of these paragraphs, on each of the sentences. No, mind, on each of the sentences, explaining what this shit means to most Westerners, because it's like you're so programmed to think in a different way, right? But when you actually think about this, and when you're reading this from a Marxist-Leninist perspective, it's like yes, it's like yes, you know. Such greed encroaches upon the demands of other members of the collective for independence and hampers the unity and cooperation of the collective. Such a simple and concise way of explaining what the problem with individualism that leads to the fostering of greed, right? The type of individualism that our Western societies constantly prattle on about, basically. Just a perfect single sentence, just complete dismantling of that idea. But again, because most Westerners are programmed a certain way, you'd have to spend an hour explaining that to them. Radisby, it quite literally probably saved us from extinction, yeah. As well as our ability to remember things in the way that we do. And keep track of things. And also walk for a really long time. Collectivism alone makes it possible to strengthen the unity and cooperation of the collective, to stimulate the creative zeal of all collective members, and to properly combine both the collective and individual demands for independence, and thus fully meet them. Because working in a social collective is the mode of humanity's existence, and because humanity's demand for independence can be satisfied only through collectivism, society based on collectivism, socialist and communist society that is the most progressive society which conforms with humanity's independent nature. Certainly, collectivist principles are not fully applied in all spheres of life immediately after the establishment of a socialist system. Because in socialist society, the vestiges from the old society remain for some time. The survival in socialist society of the remnants of the outmoded society is a passing phenomenon. With the development of socialism, these vestiges are gradually overcome, and collectivist principles are implemented more fully in all areas of social life. Although socialism is an inevitable stage of historical development, and socialist society is the most progressive one that conforms with humanity's independent nature, socialism will never be realized spontaneously. And again, single sentence, but we know what the ramifications of this sentence are. The fact that it won't be realized spontaneously means two things, right? We need working class authority and we need working class organization. Revolutionary organization. When we can substitute proletarian for revolutionary almost, actually. The more I think about it, if we want to be more in line with like Juche's teachings on revolution, it would be more accurate rather than saying working class or even proletariat, even though that's the ideology that guides them, revolutionary. The main force in DPRK today that constitutes the revolutionary main force of revolution in DPRK today is not the working people as a whole necessarily. Because in DPRK, you see, all the people have been turned into working people. So in that situation, it becomes the Revolutionary Army that becomes the main force of building socialism because it is the most highly disciplined, the most organized, the one that fulfills the party's policy most militantly, and also is on the front lines of building socialist construction, whether it's hospitals or schools or homes or whatever, helping to harvest. It's the important thing. It's the important pivotal tool of building socialism. And in China, you see also the same thing, right? More and more as the Chinese socialist system becomes developed, you see that the same thing happening with the People's Liberation Army as well. And I mean, you could even make an argument that ultimately it is the Revolutionary Army building up those forces in the revolutionary struggle to overthrow imperialism and colonialism and so on and so forth that also ends up being the main force that unites the working class behind that socialist program. Something to think about. In order to realize socialism, we must prepare the revolutionary forces capable of doing this and evolve a correct method of struggle. Unless the revolutionary forces and the method of struggle are prepared, the desire for independence of the popular masses who aspire after socialism will remain a mere wish. The idea of eliminating exploitation, oppression, and social inequality, as well as the private ownership on which these are based, and of setting up an equal society based on public ownership, was put forward by utopian socialists a long time ago. However, the utopian socialists, despite their sympathy for the misery of the exploited working masses, failed to see them as the revolutionary force, capable of burying the exploitative society and building a new society. They considered that the irrational aspects of capitalist society could be corrected by enlightening people and appealing to the quote unquote goodwill of the exploiter class. Classic. It is an unscientific illusion to expect goodwill from the exploiter class, whose nature is greed. The utopian socialists' expectation of goodwill from the exploiter class was their historical limitation. Yep, Gramsci is so good for. Honestly, Dummy Dorko, Gramsci is unironically one of the best pre Juche things you can read to have a better understanding of Juche. Like I feel like if you read Gramsci before you read Juche, that will automatically right there give you a better footing through which to understand Juche. I fully believe that. Gramsci. What'd I say, Gromsky? Gonna smoke some Gramskys today. Yeah, me too. The exploiter class and their stooges put forward the theory of class cooperation and tried to block the struggle of the exploited working masses against exploitation and oppression. Within the communist movement, reformists and revisionists demanded class cooperation and seriously harmed the revolutionary movement. Today, traitors to socialism are also clamoring for a return to capitalism, harboring illusions about capitalism and expecting aid and cooperation from the imperialists. History shows that to expect goodwill or class cooperation from the exploiter class is to make a mess of the revolution. Marxism combined the demands of the working people who aspire to socialism with revolutionary forces and a revolutionary fighting method. Marxism made clear that contradictions existed between the productive forces and relations of production in capitalist society. That these contradictions could be resolved through the class struggle of the exploited working people against the exploiter class, and that the working class would take charge of and lead this class struggle. Thanks to Marxism, the inevitability of the collapse of capitalism and the victory of socialism was proved. And the demands of the exploited working people who aspired to socialism were linked with the practical revolutionary forces and a revolutionary fighting method capable of meeting their demands. Socialism was thus converted from a utopian scheme into a science, and a revolutionary change took place in the history of humanity's struggle for liberation. Okay, Mama. Have a good stream, comrade. Good luck. It's a fun game. You're gonna enjoy it, I think. It's hard at first, but once you get the hang of it, it gets real fucking fun. However, the theory of socialism in the preceding age, based on the materialist outlook on history, was not free from historical limitations. And here's where you can hear the Marxists crying out everywhere. Because, again, and before I get into this next section, let me just point out that Juche does not say to throw out Marxism-Leninism, that in DPRK, there's quite literally university courses where you get masters and doctorates in Marxism-Leninism. Okay? So there's no like reduction or like it's not negating Marxism-Leninism. It's simply pointing out that there are certain historical limitations which can be overcome by updating our theory in a creative way that answers new important questions that are arising in that revolutionary practice. And so, again, if you think back to that quote by Kim Jong-il I showed you this morning, we think about philosophy and social sciences having two aspects: inheritance and originality or innovation, right? And we have to consider that in this as well. That just because it's talking about historical limitations of the dialect of the materialist conception of history doesn't mean that it's negating Marxism-Leninism, and in fact you should study both of them together to have a complete understanding, right? Could I tell your IRLs that? I mean, I could try. It's an uphill battle for both of us. Trust me, participate. But it's a worthwhile battle to engage in, I will say. So, now let me get into this section. Again, with all of you knowing that Juche is premised by Marxism-Leninism, that it fully is compatible with Marxism-Leninism, and pointing out historical limitations that we should be aware of does not negate any of that. So, However, the theory of socialism in the preceding age, based on the materialist outlook on history, aka historical materialism, was not free from historical limitations. This theory did not regard the social and historical movement as a movement of the motive force, as a movement which begins and develops on the initiative and through the role of the popular masses, its motive force. Although it does consider the masses to be the changing factor in society, it does so in a different regard because it considers, for example, when it talks about the social being, it includes the social wage as well, what is called social wealth, included with humanity themselves. Whereas if we think about the Juche definition of humanity, social wealth is separated from that, which actually makes more sense if you think about it, because social wealth cannot be the same as the being, humanity, which creates the social wealth. We're also that being which transforms nature and society, and we have to understand that our ideas and our ideology does have a positive influence on the material changes. That's not idealism. That's just a recognition of the mechanism by which, first, the material changes gives ways to certain ideas in society, and then those ideas in society influence certain revolutionaries, certain resistance fighters to spread those ideas and fight for a better society, to fight against that oppression and exploitation, which the ruling class pushes back against with its own ideology, right? This theory did not regard the social and historical movement as a movement of the motive force, as a movement which begins and develops on the initiative and through the role of the popular masses, its motive force, but as a natural historic process, which changes and develops due to material and economic factors. According to the materialist outlook on history, the more the productive forces develop in a capitalist society, the more intensive the incompatible contradictions between the productive forces and relations of production, and the antagonisms between the exploiter class and the exploited class grow. The more the working class and other revolutionary forces develop in strength, and, accordingly, the more the revolution matures. Now, the proof that this is that there's historical limitation in this development is the very fact that Marx and Engels themselves, Lenin, and others who came afterwards had to make up for this limitation by saying, okay, this is true, but there is this thing acting against this. Bourgeois propaganda, the labor aristocracy, so on and so forth. So they all recognize that there is this historical limitation. Juche simply recognizes likewise, but then gets down to the core of that historical limitation rather than trying to make a rule that will help them overcome it, if that makes sense. Now, obviously, the rule played an important thing and was beneficial, but it itself was limited, and the proof of that, again, is that there was mistakes made in the ideological education and the organization of USSR, which led to it being undermined and tragically overthrown. Seeing material and economic factors as fundamental in the revolutionary struggle, the preceding theory of socialism failed to raise the task of strengthening the motive force of the revolution and enhancing its role as the basic way to carry out the revolution. Which is why early on in Marx's work he was making the mistake of thinking that revolution would first break out in the advanced capitalist countries. And again, near the end of his life, he realized these limitations himself, and right before he passed away, he actually started to think, you know, what, maybe it will break out in Russia first. So even Marx understood that there was these limitations, not in dialectical materialism. Dialectical materialism is a scientific method of analysis. But historical materialism, which is the historical analysis using dialectical materialism. It's just adjusting the tradition to reflect to material nature of consciousness, which is just obviously correct and underdeveloped in Marx specifically, which he himself recognized. Absolutely, Frank. And the reason why this limitation exists in Marxism, by the way, is because Marxism at the time developed in a contest between individualism, metaphysics, and idealism. And so Marx really, while developing to understand the world, is also developing in order to combat all these reactionary trends of philosophical thought. Idealism, metaphysics, so on and so forth. And so a lot of its core philosophical questions are dealing with combating those things. Whereas Juche, the benefit of Juche being able to now consider that what Marx has improved in that context is being absolutely correct, is able to then say, okay, well, now that we understand the way that the material world develops, now let us also consider the way that humanity interacts with that material world, and thus understand subjective factors of revolution, which also, by the way, helps to like combat certain trends that we see, reactionary opportunist trends in Marxism, such as the idea of stagism, that every country must pass through feudalism and then capitalism in order to reach socialism, which of course is a metaphysical viewpoint that ignores the fact that one country experiencing capitalism can be understood and analyzed by other countries, and thus there's no need for every single country to pass through a purely capitalist phase or whatever, right? That's nonsense. And just like the idea that First Nation society or others would inherently go from being this collectivist society to being a class-based society is not something that you can concretely argue because there's no actual evidence of that. And it's colonialism that brought those things here, that brought class society to many First Nations. Now, I'm not talking all of them, but to many. That's why I'm specifying many, right? Engels has a really good quote that talks about consciousness too, Frank, that really like goes into exactly what I'm saying. I wish I could remember it now. The economic situation is the basis, but the various elements of the superstructure, political forms of the class struggle, and its results, to wit, constitutions established by the victorious class after a successful battle, etc., judicial forms, and even the reflexes of all these actual struggles in the brains of participants, political, juristic, philosophical theories, religious views, and they're further developed into systems of dogma. Also exercise their influence upon the course of the historical struggles, and in many cases preponderate in determining their form. Which is why I say, this is why I constantly tell people, Frank, that future revolutionaries. Sorry, yeah. I missed that. But look, this is why I say that Juche does not contradict fucking Marxism, Leninism in any way. It simply improves its understanding of the overall world. So, to continue. As for the influence exerted by the development of productive forces in capitalist society, we must not approach it only from one side. The development of productive forces in capitalist society intensifies the bipolar differentiation which results from the increasing imbalance between rich and poor. It sharpens class contradictions, while at the same time it provides the monopolists with increasing possibilities to spend part of their high profits on soothing class contradictions. In addition, the development of the productive forces results in the expansion of the ranks of industrial workers by their incorporation of peasants and other petit bourgeois classes, and also in an increased proportion of workers engaged in mental and technical labor in productive sectors, as well as those in non-productive sectors. Of course, objective conditions have a great influence on the revolutionary struggle, but the decisive factor in the victory of revolution lies not in the objective conditions, but in how to strengthen the motive force of the revolution and how to raise its role. Whether in a developed capitalist country or an underdeveloped one, socialism can emerge victorious if the motive force of the revolution is strengthened and its role enhanced through efficient work. History shows that socialism first triumphed in relatively backward countries, not in countries where capitalism had developed. The experience of our revolution, which has advanced under the banner of the Juche idea, shows that if we strengthen the motive force of revolution and enhance its role, we can not only avail ourselves of the given objective conditions, but also turn unfavorable objective conditions into favorable ones, and ensure the victory of the revolution by turning a misfortune into a blessing. The limitations of the preceding theory based on materialist outlook on history have been revealed more clearly in the course of socialist construction since the establishment of the socialist system. In general, the more a society develops, the greater the role played by the popular masses, the driving force of social movement, becomes. This is because their independent consciousness and creative ability increase with the development of society. The role of the popular masses as the driving force of social movement is raised to an unprecedented level in socialist society. Socialist society developed thanks to the creative power of the popular masses, who are armed with a high level of consciousness and are united as one. In socialist society, the transformation of humanity, their ideological remolding, becomes an important and primary task than that of creating the material and economic conditions of socialism. Only when precedence is given to the transformation of humanity will it be possible to strengthen the driving force of the revolution and increase its role, and thus build socialism successfully. If the ideological remolding of the popular masses is regarded as a matter of secondary importance, and the work of strengthening the driving force of revolution and enhancing its role is neglected in socialist society, while attaching decisive importance to the objective material and economic conditions, and concentrating only on economic construction, the building of socialism as a whole cannot be carried out properly, and economic construction itself cannot avoid stagnation. These practices were very apparent in some countries, which had been building socialism in the past. Taking advantage of this, the renegades of socialism carried out reforms and committed counter-revolutionary acts. Holy shit! Raid! Battle stations! Comrades, get to your battle stations. We got attackers coming in. Oh, Dave wishes me well. Oh, never mind. False alarm. Welcome in, Raiders. Thank you so much. Get in here, get in here. Thank you so much, Dave, for the raid. Appreciate that. Everybody follow our comrade Dave Legend.
Harry wins! You won
Thank
the
you,
bar!
Comrade Steve. Thank you. Hey, Bob, welcome back. Hey, St. Lotus. Rye, welcome, comrades. Welcome, welcome. Okay, we are just reading. We only have a couple pages left here right now. We're right now. St. Lotus, hello. He's gonna have a lie down, but asked us to send his best. Awesome, appreciate that. Mode Bong, hello, welcome, welcome. We're reading Socialism is Science here from Kim Jong-il. We're on the last couple pages of the first chapter. Get in, get comfortable. If you would like a link of this work for yourself, you can get it right here. Hey, Yerger, yeah, and Helmet 2 tabs. Stereoscopic Larry Vision. Alright, I'll continue the read. Again, we only got a few pages left, and then we're going to get on to the news for today. Larry needs weed and heating money as well. If anybody is able to help, please consider contributing to my PayPal right there. Thank you very much. You can also contribute through my socials as well. Larry needs medicine and heating. This is my medicine for the next 2 weeks. Not good. Social anxiety and pain. So if anyone's able to help, please consider. Thank you. Alright, let me finish up this read and then we'll get to the news. I'll back up to the beginning of this to the beginning of this sentence. Or wait. Let's back up a little bit further than that even. Right here. Yeah, let's back up to right here. That way you all can... This will give you context as to what I'm reading right here, since you just came in. This statement will stand on its own, trust me. Only when precedence is given to the transformation of humanity will it be possible to strengthen the driving force of revolution and increase its role, and thus build socialism successfully. If the ideological remolding of the popular masses is regarded as a matter of secondary importance, and the work of strengthening the driving force of the revolution and enhancing its role is neglected in socialist society, while attaching decisive importance to the objective material and economic conditions, and concentrating as a whole only on the economic construction, the building of socialism as a whole cannot be carried out properly, and economic construction itself cannot avoid stagnation. These practices were very apparent in some countries which had been building socialism in the past. Taking advantage of this, the renegades of socialism carried out reforms and committed counter-revolutionary acts, destroying the socialist economic system itself. Hey Barry, in my car on the way home, got my soup, got my sandwich. Oh, okay, perfect, Barry. I only got a couple pages left of this. I think I'll be done by the time you get home, maybe. We'll see. I'm gonna go. Let's read this. In the past, the founders of Marxism evolved socialist theory by putting the main stress on material and economic conditions. This is due to the fact that it was regarded as an important historical task to disprove the bourgeois reactionary theory, which consecrated capitalism and preached its eternity, while maintaining mysticism and fatalism. But now, the renegades of socialism are advocating the material is almighty doctrine and the economy is almighty doctrine in order to restore capitalism, of which they harbor illusions. Putting socialism on a new scientific basis was regarded as a very urgent task, not only to overcome the historical limitations of the preceding theory of socialism, but also to defend socialism against all kinds of opportunist distortions and imperialist attacks. I missed you too, Barry. Don't worry, I don't think you're ignoring us. I can't wait to see you on stream tonight. I might stream until you go live. We'll see. And then that way I can do the unofficial kick raid to Barry's stream. That's kind of my idea right now. Love you, Barry. You know, you're you're one of my favorites, bud. You know that. The historical task of putting socialism on a new scientific basis was successfully solved by the great leader Comrade Kim Il-sung. Let's see those Kim Il-sung emotes, please. Who created the Juche idea, and on this basis, evolved an original socialist theory. The respected Comrade Kim Il-sung discovered the philosophical principle that humanity is the master of everything and decides everything. He explained a new law which governs social movement, the movement of the motive force, and he put socialism on a new scientific basis. The socialist and communist cause, as clarified by the Juche idea, is the cause of the popular masses for their complete independence. Socialism, as scientifically systematized by the great leader Comrade Kim Il-sung, is humanity-centered socialism, and socialism centered on the masses. Ours is a socialism where the popular masses are the masters of everything, where everything serves them, and which is developing through their united efforts. The Juche-oriented theory of socialism scientifically clarifies the essence of socialism and the law governing its development by placing humanity at the center. On this basis, the theory explained that if the building of socialism is to succeed, a vigorous struggle must be waged to occupy the two fortresses of socialism and communism, the ideological and the material fortresses. And that here, absolute precedence must be given to the struggle to take the ideological fortress. The scientific accuracy and truth of the Juche-oriented theory of socialism has been proved by the practical experience of our revolution. Our people began to wage the struggle for socialism in the backward circumstances of a colonial, semi-feudal society. They had to carry out the revolution and construction under unusually difficult circumstances. Despite this, our party could successfully blaze the trail for socialism by constantly making its main task that of firmly uniting the popular masses around the party and the leader, organizationally and ideologically, as required by the Juche idea, thus strengthening the driving force of the revolution and enhancing its role. Our party is increasing the political and ideological might of our revolution in every way possible by giving definite priority to the transformation of humanity, to ideological remolding in all work of the building of socialism, while at the same time strengthening our self-reliant national economy and defense. As a result, it is vigorously advancing the road of revolution and construction without facilitation, even under the present complex circumstances. Practical experience clearly shows that our socialism, the embodiment of the Juche idea, is the most scientific and viable socialism. And there's your first chapter, comrades. Blah blah. There we go. We read. I hope you enjoyed. We only got a couple of these and then we'll be on to the next one. Hey, Barry. And by the way, I just want to say, you know, everybody, when people see this, they're like, this part right here. When people hear this part right here, firmly uniting the popular masses around the party and the leader, people usually go, you know, the leader? Oh my God, that sounds horrible and scary and what? Leaders? And then they usually, not always, but they usually fall into some sort of Orientalist type of like take on why DPRK focusing on the leader is like some unique thing or whatever, right? Yes, Barry. See how easy it is to explain when you're being honest about it, Barry? Leadership is an essential part of organizing. And also, another thing we could argue, communist. Right, Barry and others, is that not only is it an essential thing, but how could you have unity without a center of unity, the party and who the party and the leader can represent? We're not talking ruler here; we're talking a leader. And let's think about Raul Castro. Let's think about what Che Guevara had to say about leaders and apply that to what we just read from Kim Jong-il there, okay? So I just want to read you this to sort of complement the end of this. In this, Fidel is the master. His own special way of fusing himself with the people can be appreciated only by seeing him in action. At the great public mass meetings, one can observe something like a dialogue of two tuning forks whose vibrations interact, producing new sounds. Fidel and the mass begin to vibrate together in a dialogue of growing intensity until they reach the climax in an abrupt conclusion crowned by our cry of struggle and victory. The difficult thing to understand for someone not living through the experience of the revolution is this close dialectical unity between the individual and the mass, in which both are interrelated and, at the same time, in which the mass, as an aggregate of individuals, interacts with its leaders. Some phenomena of this kind can be seen under capitalism, when politicians appear capable of mobilizing popular opinion. But when these are not genuine social movements, and if they were, it would not be entirely correct to call them capitalist, they live only so long as the individual who inspires them, or until the harshness of capitalist society puts an end to the people in the read on